Shalom Aleichem Rabbi Sai. This is Rabbi Yehuda Levin, and you are tuned into the Fear Kashis, where we ask the questions that people fear to ask, and we give the answers according to the Hashkafa and the Torah perspective of the Gedolim of yesteryear with no spin. I am your host, Yehuda Levin. Fasten your seatbelts for the next 54 minutes. We are going to have a truly fascinating program. This is our pre-Rosh Hashanah program, the last program of Tafshin Ayin as we power towards a new year. And let me take this opportunity to wish each and every one member of Klal Yisrael a ksiva v'chasima toiva, a good year, a year of no aggravation, a year of Torah activism, a year of improvement, a year of Kiddush Shem Shamayim. And that's what this program is all about. There are three ways that you can access this program: through our hotline, 212-461-2852. For those who have a heter, they have a permission to use the internet. They can do this by accessing the Fear, F-E-A-R, Kashis, K-A-S-H-E-S, .com. Or, of course, you can be listening to this on the radio each and every Sunday evening at a little after midnight until a little before 1 a.m. It's actually Sunday evening, Monday morning. My dear friends, let me mention that because of the economic climate, now more than ever before, many people are finding things quite difficult. And we at my shul, Kehilas Mevakshe Hashem, located at 3011 Avenue K in Brooklyn, between Nostrand Avenue and East 31st Street, Kehilas Mevakshe Hashem has a policy of making things a little bit easier for Jewish families by providing, at no cost, free seats the entire year, including the Yom Noraim, including the high holidays. It doesn't cost you a penny. And we provide Kiddush, we provide uplifting Balei Tefillah, your humble servant Davin Shachris and Ma'ariv, and we have a wonderful Bal Musaf coming to us, a Kol Yungaman from Lakewood, with a great deal of experience in voice training, so it promises to be an uplifting, a spiritual, no talking service throughout the Yom Noraim, and you're invited to come, men, women, and children who appreciate the importance of no talking or disturbances during tefillah. If not, please leave them home. We also have a tremendous Bal Tekiah. He happens to be Reb Daniel Sasnik, who is a police captain. The man is absolutely a very wonderful shofar blower, as well as a medakdek, tremendously scrupulous in the way he reads the Torah. And so it's really an all-star cast. And if I say so myself, with uplifting sermons, uplifting drushes, you're invited to join with us for Yom Noraim, for the upcoming Sukkot holiday, and all year round. We do not schnugger. It doesn't cost any money for seats, no membership, and there's usually a hot kiddush after the conclusion of davening. If you want further information, you can fax me at 718-951-1937, or you can see our ads in both Hamodia and Yated, and our letter, that's the first letter in the Jewish Press letters to the editor. You can contact me and we'll be happy to reserve place for you. My dear friends, we are going to begin with the Dvar Torah, but first let me tell you that we are going to discuss very briefly the business as usual approach of Askanim, so-called, who have endorsed another low-life politician, all smiles, with a picture in Hamodia called Eric Schneidman. And many of you might be, as I did, receive his literature today. I received it. This is being taped on Thursday before Shabbos, ParshasVayelechShow5700533. And Schneidman is an ultra-liberal. We'll discuss that briefly. I am also going to read to you an enhanced copy, transcript, of remarks that I made at the Igud HaRabbanim's annual Siyum Hashas, which is a tremendous Kiddush Hashem. And then for the majority of the program, I am going to introduce you to one of my dearest and oldest friends, who is the person who is single-handedly responsible for the fact that I am for these last 3 decades plus a year involved in Torah activism and fighting for morality. The person who connected me with Rav Avigdor Miller, a very dear friend who's a fascinating raconteur. His name is Michael Barbro, and we'll be meeting him a little bit later in the program, and he will stay with us for the conclusion of the program. But let me begin by saying that what's uppermost on everybody's mind now is what we can do and what we're supposed to be doing in the waning days of Elul and during the high holy days, the 10 days of penance, the Aseret Yemei Tshuva from Rosh Hashanah to Yom Kippur. What is it that we're supposed to do? Are there any shortcuts that can give us a positive judgment in the eyes of Almighty God? And I referenced this sefer before. This sefer was written by a young man who tragically passed away from Yena Machla. His name is Rav Karlinsky, and his father, Tzalang Yaron, is the Rosh Yeshiva of the Grodno Yeshiva in Eretz Yisrael. He's one of the Gedolei Yisrael, Gedolei Rosh Yeshivas. And this Rabbi Karlinsky, who passed away with great Yisurim around 10 to 15 years ago, he wrote various svarim, and this sefer is called Kuntris Eitzes Eich L'Zakois Bedin to Yom Neroyim. How can we have a positive adjudication in the high holy days? And I'd like to mention some of the ideas that he suggests. One of them is the Chazal that tells us, Kol hamavir al midoisav mavir loy al kol pisha'av. This is unbelievable. If a person has a certain attribute, a certain characteristic, and a negative characteristic, a personal character flaw, and he or she reverses, they stifle themselves, they choke their inclinations, and they switch things around, they are mavir al midosav. They overcome and change and reverse their normal characteristics and attributes of a negative sort. Mavirin loy al kol pishov. Hashem says, if you can make a sea change and an about face, then I will make a sea change in adjudicating you, and I will overlook all of your other shortcomings and trespass and transgressions. So this is one way. This is one way. This is one thing you can do. Kol hamerachem al habriyos merachmim olav min hashamayim. Whoever has compassion on God's creatures, in turn, God will have compassion on him. Now is the time for tzedakah and chesed, and to go the extra mile, nay, the extra 5 miles, to show compassion on each and every Jew. And I want to mention something. You know, I'm an extremist, a right-winger, a kanoi, as somebody who seems to be very negative, if you will. And yet, I want to tell you one of the kavanos that I have by Yehei Shmei Rabbah, when I remember, not every time, is that Rav Arla brings down, the Shermi Amunim Rebbe, that during Kaddish one should have in mind that he wants to see the uplifting of the evildoers who are suffering in hell, in Gehenna, and that he wants them to be taken out of hell and to be saved. In other words, we have compassion even on the big sinners, even on the big-time evildoers. However, that compassion does not extend that we have compassion in this world where they are in the process of doing their evil and bringing the world down. That's not the time to have compassion on them. But once they're in the netherworlds and they're suffering, we want even them. We want to have Rachmanis even on them. And that's part of the Kavodah in Kaddish and by Yehei Shmei Rabbah. My dear friends, call Merachem al Abriyos, Merachem alav min hashamayim, to show compassion. Show compassion for those who don't have and for those who need. And Mida Keneged Mida, measure for measure, God will show compassion on you. V'satzilenu mikol gezeres achzorius. Save us, God, from all negative decrees, harsh decrees. Ki l'chol levad einenu tuluyos. Because as we say in Slichas, our eyes are only towards you. if we have confidence and belief, full belief in Almighty God, and we understand that He is the only one who can impact on us, in that merit that we have the tachet and we turn to Him, in that merit, even if we don't deserve otherwise to have penance and forgiveness, we can be inscribed for a good year. Pachat hadin, the fourth way of having a successful judgment is by being fearful. If one fears, if one takes this seriously, if one utilizes his or her imagination to vividly create a pictorial of what is happening, they were actually standing in court before Almighty God with the entire heavenly sphere arrayed to judge us on each and every small thing that we've done, and we start to recount, we start to think about all the things that we've done, all the time that we've wasted, all the people that we have ba'avled, that we have wronged, all the ways that we have fallen short, and we are fearful of din. We fear God, and we fear Him. By doing this, we're being Mamlech HaKadosh Baruch Hu on us. Rosh Hashanah is not just a day of judgment. The judgment is an outcome of the fact that God is the ultimate monarch. And one of the signposts of a monarch is life and death and judgment. That is one of the main job qualifications of a king. And therefore, with God, He judges us because He's a king. And we're mamlechim by standing in front of Him in judgment and acknowledging that He's judging us and fearing Him. And this fear can help make our outcome a good outcome. Now here's the one that I believe refers both to me and my very special upcoming guest. And that is called Rabin Tzrichim Lo. That sometimes God is judging a person who's a father and a breadwinner, and people depend on him. His family, his community depends on him because he's the shamus, the sexton, or the gabbai, the beadle in the shul. He takes care of things. He makes sure things run. He provides sustenance for his family. He collects tzedakah. He's a gabbai tzedakah. So if many people are contingent, on this person, when God judges him, He doesn't simply judge the person in a vacuum, just what this person did or didn't do, but He judges the person in relation vis-a-vis to his environment. And since many people are contingent on this person, he is a valuable asset to society far more than just for himself. And therefore, even if for himself he would not merit a good adjudication, he can merit that because Rabin Tzrichim Lo, many need him. And I would say that people like my friend Michael Barbaro, who, as you will hear a little further into this program, is a person who is involved in doing things which augur to the credit, to the honor and glory of God, and are a Kiddush Hashem for the Jewish people. Therefore, in effect, he's doing things for all of us which we are not doing. That's called Rabin Tzrichim Lo, that many, many people need him, because without him doing these things would not be done. Similarly, you have a person like Reb Ephraim Luft in Eretz Yisrael, who fights for meaningful Jewish music, uplifting spiritual music, as opposed to the jungle beat and the secular low-life influence of a lot of the crass common culture that is being the bilge, that is being sewer-lined into our community by so-called Hasidic music stars. So Reb Ephraim Luft is noitel schar keneged kulam. He takes the schar for all those people who are not doing in this area, and he's doing for Kvayt Shemayim. So certainly Rabin Tzrichim Lo, and he gets a tremendous head start, a jump start. So the point, my dear friends, is each and every one of us can think, can put ourselves, even in these final days of the countdown to Rosh Hashanah and the Yom HaNorayim, to justice, Judgment Day, we can put ourselves into way of Rabin Tzrichim Lo, whether we are teachers or doers of chesed, or whether we inform people how to be tzniistic, or whether we encourage people who are dejected and depressed. The story is told that in his later years, the Chavetz Chaim, what did he do the night of Yom Kippur? He sat with an elderly gentleman who had never married and who was dejected and broken, and he told him about the difficulties that he, the Chavetz Chaim, had in his life, how he grew up a yosem, an orphan, and how difficult life was for him, and all of the vicissitudes that he went through in an effort to make the other person feel uplifted. That was what the Chavetz Chaim was doing the night of all nights, the night of Yom HaKippurim. My dear friends, of course, chizik va'amal b'Torah, harving in divrei Torah and learning Torah is absolutely the way to get a good judgment. And a chizik in Shmir Shabbos, Kodesh, and that's a little too late when you hear this. It's going to already be the last Shabbos. To be dan as kol adam l'kav zchus, to judge everybody meritoriously. When you see somebody doing something which is negative, try to be melamed zchus, try to find something positive. And in that zchus, and of course answering Amen Yehei Shmei Rabbah the right way with the proper intentions. This is Rabbi Yehuda Levin. The program is the Fear Kashas. Before we go to our guest in another 5 or 6 minutes, I want to read you an enhanced statement that I made delivered at the Rabbinical Alliance of America, the Igor Rabbanim's annual Shiyam Hashas, which was a tremendous Kiddush Hashem. It took place this past week, approximately the 20th day of Elul. For many years, the Rabbinical Alliance of America has been on the cutting edge of defending Torah true family values. Our 30 years of addresses to the March for Life, our organizing interreligious leaders in Jerusalem to oppose a yearly homosexual parade, the story of which appeared with a picture on the front page of the New York Times several years ago. Recently, we were the top story on Drudge Report for stating that Elena Kagan is not kosher to serve on any court, and she still is not. Tonight, at the Rabbinical Alliance's special yearly convocation, attended by over 125 member rabbis and their wives, we take the courageous stand in his honor of issuing our first annual scarlet letters to so-called conservatives who betray God's family values by embracing segments of the militant homosexual agenda. We condemn Rush Limbaugh for endorsing homosexual unions. Although Glenn Beck had a wonderful gathering at the Lincoln Memorial, his telling Bill O'Reilly that he is not concerned or opposed to homosexual marriage is like someone donating $5 to the collection box with his right hand, and with his left hand, he's pulling out a 20 from the collection box hidden behind his back. It's shocking, it's painful, and it's inexcusable. The so-called American Conservative Union, which hosts the Washington, D.C. annual CPAC gathering, recently included a homosexual organization, a fifth column. ACU also earns a scarlet letter of betrayal. The same for Ann Coulter, whom we defended against accusations of anti-Semitism. She will be addressing an event called HomoCon for the GOP Proud organization. That's a homosexual organization infiltrating the conservative movement. Miss Coulter is not anti-Jewish. She's just plain anti the Jewish God of the Torah, whose principal enemy transgenerationally is Amalek. See Deuteronomy 25 verses 17 through 19 and Rashi in verse 18 that describes how Amalek contaminated the Jews through homosexuality. Grover Norquist is a prominent so-called conservative who's for lowering taxes, but he promotes and raises the homosexual agenda. Rick Lazio is the Conservative Party candidate for governor of New York. He opposes homosexual marriage but supports homosexual unions. No one should vote for Rick Lazio. He joins the heads of the once great Human Events magazine, who now talk out of both sides of their mouths on this issue. We decry the increasing amount of time that the New York State Conservative Party has endorsed candidates like Lazio who support, quote unquote, they support regular abortion and homosexual partnerships. For too long, the party leadership has betrayed their founding principles and the overwhelming numbers of their own membership. We call upon other religious denominations to provide clear, unambiguous, moral, spiritual leadership and join us in clarifying that it is not acceptable to oppose partial birth abortion, but to accept 99% of abortions on demand. Nor is it acceptable to play word games with God. Marriage, no. Unions and partnership, yes. We call on the Southern Baptist Convention, the Catholic Conference of Bishops, the AME and Black Church, the Greek and Russian Orthodox Church. We call upon you to stop tiptoeing around the issue. Choose sides loudly and emphatically. Lead your flock and join the fray. Follow the example of the Rabbinical Alliance of America. We honor the American Family Association, the Family Research Council, WorldNet daily leaders Joseph Farah and David Kapelian, who challenged Ann Coulter for her betrayal of principle. We also recognize Peter LaBarbera of Americans for Truth and Brian Kamneker, a Jew, who heads the organization called Mass Resistance in Massachusetts, for their consistent, totally uncompromised and uncompromising leadership in opposition to any and all aspects of the homosexual agenda. The conservative movement and religio-conservatives will not be successful in a return to godly values as long as they continue to tiptoe around this issue and make common cause with the scarlet letter crowd who are betraying us. I was shocked when I reached out to Mr. Winter at Human Events, and he told me that he supports civil unions and repeated several times that homosexuals are not evil. Mr. Winter, they are or aren't any more or less evil than God in the Torah, the Bible, says they are. They are as evil as adulterers, pornographers, incest engagers, and the list goes on. Michael Savage is the only national talk show host who continues to identify the dangers of the homosexual network and agenda. For this, he deserves our gratitude and respect. Our ancient rabbinic texts, going back millennia, declare that what sealed the decree of the flood of Noah was when men began writing marriage contracts with fellow men and animals. It doesn't say marriage, Mr. Winter. It says contracts. In other words, civil unions and domestic partnerships, which you told me you support, Mr. Winter. I requested that Mr. Winter, publisher of Human Events for decades, allow me to pen a guest column giving my side of the issue. He declined. So much for fairness and giving a chance for the religious perspective to be aired in even a long-time conservative venue. This is why we are losing even in the conservative movement. Conservatism is based on godly values. When we ignore his eternal values, he ignores us. We have more homosexual activity, more fornication, and more broken families. God deals measure for measure. We so-called conservatives are much more responsible for the moral decline of society than are the most extreme liberals, because acquiescence and capitulation of those who officially stand for righteousness is even more the cause of losing God's grace. Part 2. The influence of the homosexualization of society is pernicious and is constantly making inroads even into the periphery of Orthodox Jewish society. There are organizations like Ortho-Dykes, gay, bisexual, transgendered alumni of yeshivas and day schools, a modern Orthodox quote-unquote rabbi in Netanya who declares he's homosexual. Yeshiva University hosts a night where 3 homosexual graduates address an overflow crowd of students. WABC talk show host Shmuley Bateach tells Hawaiian Governor Linda Lingle that he urges her to sign domestic partnership legislation. What a desecration of God's name and his values. Thankfully, the Jewish Governor Lingle ignored Bateach, as we all should. But the worst is the recent protocol authored by Nathaniel Helfgott and signed by Avi Weiss and 120 so-called modern Orthodox clergymen, which deals with respecting homosexual couples and their families within the confines of Orthodox synagogues. This sacrilege comes about because of the spiritual cause and effect of our right-wing Orthodox organizations, Agudath Israel of America, Lubavitch, OU, the Union of Orthodox Jewish Congregations of America, Satmar, and local rabbinic organizations from Portland to Chicago to Missouri, who do not address these blasphemies ever increasing in society. Thus, through their taciturnity, they empower the desecration which occurs through the Bateachs and the 120 modern Orthodox. We are collectively guilty for our silence. This sacrilege occurred 1 month ago to coordinate with another blasphemy, as pointed out by the Jewish Telegraphic Agency, the profaning of Jerusalem, the holy city, with the annual homosexual march. For 1 month, not one of the aforementioned Orthodox organizations protested either of these 2 occurrences, not the homosexual parade in Jerusalem, and not the 120 modern Orthodox clergymen who signed that disgraceful protocol. Shame on us. Tonight, we of the Rabbinical Alliance of America once again take the lead and are notel schar keneged kulam. We are the recipient of the spiritual reward that should have accrued to all those who chose to remain silent. A good investment. We vigorously protest and condemn each and every breach in the wall of our faith through politically correct kowtowing or accommodating any aspect of the deviancy agenda. In the merit of our protest, may we and all of Klal Yisrael be inscribed in the book of life for a healthy, spiritually fulfilling year of Torah and activism. At this time, we express our gratitude that at this late stage of the devolving culture in the liberal New York State and the city we call Sodom on the Hudson, we still have candidates who, unlike Lazio, oppose abortion and on demand and homosexual marriage under any other name. Former Congressman Diaguardi has reached out to the Orthodox Jewish community, and although the Alliance can't endorse him, I can as an individual, and I urge everyone to check the view of each candidate regarding abortion on demand and civil unions before voting. Thank you. These were the remarks that I delivered at the Igor Harabanim, and hopefully, besides presenting this to you, our dear listeners, and several thousand people in the Torah Dika community, This is worth reflecting upon before Rosh Hashanah. In addition to that, we hope to put this out on the internet to the secular and religious Christian community to wake them up. My dear friends, before I introduce my guest, who is now situated right next to me, I'm just going to mention as follows. In a recent edition of Hamodia, this past week, during the ParshasVayelech week, I was horrified to once again see something which is little more than prostitution by our Jewish community. And that's a nice word to describe the spiritual decadence of having a group of quote-unquote askonim, schwitzers, leckers, many of them who use the title rabbi, surrounding a smiling Eric Schneidman and endorsing him for some sort of a position he is running for, whether it's Attorney General or Controller, whatever it is, a statewide position. I say, shame on these people. Do they never learn? Last September, they even managed to sucker Rabbi Wolfson into going out of his way to sign a kol koreh, a letter supporting a certain Catholic candidate in a primary, which ultimately he lost to Mr. Lander, who was an ultra-left-wing Jew who didn't want to give his kid a bris milah or did something crazy there, even though his kid is, I think, married, the child of a Gentile. But that's okay. Many people are supporting Stephen Simbrowitz for assemblyman, and he after his first wife died, Lena Simbrowitz, he's now married to a Gentile woman, and that doesn't seem to concern most people. Although somebody from the Vad HaRabbanim of Flatbush said they believe it's disgraceful and he shouldn't be endorsed, aside from some of the schmutz that he turns the other cheek to or supports. My dear friends, last year, this candidate, whose name escapes me, the Belzer decided they wanted to flex some political muscle, and so they used the fact that this Catholic candidate was officially against homosexual marriage, although he was very, very schwach, as I pointed out, and they fooled, or as they say in Yiddish, they have been gefucked. They faked out Rabbi Wolfson into supporting this fellow, and overwhelmingly, Borough Park voted for this person. Mistakenly, I explained, because they don't have enough spiritual zchus, merit, to even vote for the right person when they want to. But still, the leckers and the schwitzers saw the prostitutes who will chanfa and smile and do anything to curry favor with the low-life politicians. They saw what the rotzen of the tzibur was. But it's business as usual. This is the same week where this Hurricane Earl is now getting dangerously close to the periphery of New York. Which foolish person still doesn't understand that God is sending us an environmental message by the ever-increasing, ever-closing in on us natural disasters, particularly hurricane floods, which should connect us with Noach? We should understand what's going on. But no, I protest, I condemn these leckers, and I want to ask a question. Somebody called up the Novominsker Rav about some kind of child molestation that was taking place in, this is what I read, in the Torah Tamima. And he said that goes for the Rabbanim of Flatbush. Torah Tamima is in Flatbush. So we can't deal with Coca-Cola man. I mean, that was a ridiculous answer. So I want to ask a question. Who is responsible when these lunatics leave the asylum and misrepresent all of us and get us all as a tzibur, because we're judged two ways on Rosh Hashanah. We're judged individually and collectively. So collectively, these lowlifes are representing us. Are the Moetzes Gedolei Torah responsible? The Vad HaRabbanim of Flatbush, of Borough Park, the Novominsker, the Bobova Rebbes? Who is responsible here? Who takes responsibility? Is it like Al Gore once said when they were going to that Buddhist temple to collect money? There's no controlling authority. Judaism doesn't subscribe to there's no controlling authority. There's always a controlling authority, my dear friends. And so I want to conclude before introducing Mr. Barbaro, my dear friend, my mentor. He was my Rebbe for many years in these things, and continues to inspire me. A final caveat. Several weeks ago, after Yelena Kagan was voted in by the Senate to be a Supreme Court justice, Avi Shafran of Agudat Israel wrote an entire article. He might have said, I might have made a little half-sentence, declaration, that we disagree with her on social issues, something like that. But the whole thing he was talking about is, look, she might be very good for Jews, especially on religious liberty and gelt for the moistus. That was the inference. Again, that's a moiridik Chil Hashem. And it's much more so of a Chil Hashem when it's Avi Shafran representing Agudat Israel who's doing this. Now, this is not the first mistake Mr. Shafran made. We remember some of his golden oldies. One of them a year ago, I had Rachmanas on him when he was defending Bernie Madoff in some way. It was mamish an embarrassment. But then there was another golden oldie where he wrote in the Observer many years ago about Mendelssohn, the famous Käufer, and irritated a lot of people. Is this Das Torah when Shafran writes one of these pieces whereby the inference of not explaining, in other words, it's like saying, Kagan might be good about giving out lollipops to our children and not mentioning, but 24 hours and 7 days a week, she's pouring poison into the cultural water wellsprings we drink from. When Shafran does this, is the Nesius and the Moetzis responsible for this? Does somebody check what this person does? Or is he now an independent Das Torah? Without any further ado, I present to you Michael Barbaro, a gentleman who, for those of you who are lucky enough to see this on video, you can see him standing next to me, sitting next to me, here in our lair, in our secret headquarters, where we tape and video our radio programs, which can be seen on the Fear Kashas. They're archived on the Fear, F-E-A-R, Kashas, K-A-S-H-E-S.com. And it was approximately in late 1978, Lemisparim, at around dusk, on 13th Avenue, where I first met Mr. Barbaro, and he asked me about a sign that was up in Hebrew to translate to him, and I didn't realize that he himself is somewhat of a Yodea Sefer, and many years ago he learned in the Bronx in the Salanter Day School, which is now the Hebrew Institute or the Hebrew Day School of Riverdale, but the SAR, Salanta Akiva Riverdale, whatever. But he then told me that I could call Rev Hirsch Ginsburg and find out that Rev Moshe Feinstein had said that you could even leave yeshiva to go down to protest at City Hall against the attempts of the city council to institute homosexual legislation. I called Rabbi Ginsburg and found out that was correct. A little while after that, several months later, Mr. Barbaro again called me, and he said that they're going in December, a group of people, to the Meldrum Thompson, the outgoing governor of New Hampshire, to ask him to start a national morality organization. This was an idea, the brainchild of Mr. Barbaro, who actually beat it in terms of the idea. If this would have happened, he actually beat Jerry Falwell by approximately a half a year, because it was only a half a year afterwards that Jerry Falwell founded the first moral organization, national morality organization, called the Moral Majority. But Mr. Barbaro, my brain trust, was already thinking of this. And I said, what am I, a rabbinical student of the Mir? What am I doing? He said, well, if Rabbi Avigdor Miller told you to go, would you go? And I laughed. I said, yes. So he said, go to Rabbi Miller and say, Michael sent you. That same Sunday, I went to Rabbi Miller, and Rabbi Miller said, oh, Michael, and I saw he had great derech eretz, and Rabbi Miller gave me half the money, and I flew out with Michael Barbaro and non-Jewish priest, I think, a minister, Roger Fulton, I think, and I think Bob Peters, and we spoke to Governor Meldrum Thompson, and although he didn't end up starting that organization, but I think spiritually the fact that we made this hishtadlus, we made this effort, helped others start these organizations, and we have been active in these types of activities for the last 3 decades. Now, Michael Barbaro is a font of wisdom, and he has first-hand experiences with some of the late great Rabbonim of yesteryear, including Rav Moshe Feinstein, Rav Avigdor Miller, the late great Rabbi Hollander, the Sklerner Rebbe, the Kasher V'Rov, and onwards. So without any further ado, Shalom Aleichem, Reb Michael, and I want you to know, again I say, Michael is Noitel Schar Keneged Kulam. The schusim that this man has, he never gives up. He's constantly calling people on the phone and urging us pointing out things that are happening in the culture wars and urging us to strategizing with us and giving us suggestions and urging us to do things. And I really think it's a tremendous chus of merit for him for the new year. And I wish him a good and a healthy year. And he should have enough parnas, and he should be able to live for many, many years and continue to do the good work and the important work that he's doing that nobody else is doing. That's called Rabban Tzvichno. Tell us about your episode with the Moshe Feinstein, because I'm sure...
Thank you, Rabbi Levin. I am deeply honored by your kind words, and of course I want to wish you and your family Simoteva, and of course to all the wonderful listeners of this program.
Now, are you related to Rabbi Yitzchak Elchanan Spector?
No, Rabbi Yitzchak Elchanan Spector was a cousin of my late maternal grandmother.
Okay, and he did. Who married? He married somebody.
He married
your grandparents?
my grandparents. I believe either in
Kovna?
either in Kovna or in Novogrodok or Novarodok, where they lived.
Right. Fascinating.
And there was another famous rabbi there, Rabbi Epstein in
the Aruch HaShulchan.
Yes, he was. I remember his photograph.
And was he related?
No. As far as I know,
present at the chasna.
I assume I'm not certain, but I would very possible. I have to respectfully correct Rabbi Levin on one point. The idea of going to meet with to discuss with Meldrum Thompson to create a morality organization was actually not my idea. The idea was of a wonderful, good man, a dear late friend of mine of blessed memory, Rabbi Moshe Greenis.
Oh, Rabbi Greenis.
Rabbi Greenis.
I want to tell you how the world. How everything comes around. You hear? You introduced him to Rabbi Greenis, and at one point he was a guest on our radio program where we were discussing Mario Cuomo and Lou Lerman during that race, and met several times and was active with him. Today, Rabbi Greenis' grandson, who is a budding Torah scholar, devotes and donates time to learn with my son, who is considerably younger than him, in a yeshiva in New Jersey. So that relationship that you started on that level continues with his grandson and my children. But listen, we have around 13 minutes, so I want to quickly focus. You walked into a Feinstein's house on Riverside on FDR Drive, and you met with him. And the late Rabbi Rivlin was his secretary, who interpreted into Yiddish when you informed him in the early 70s or the late 60s about
70s, 1972 or 3.
Okay. About the fact that New York State was in the process of passing a law legalizing abortion on demand.
No, this actually, New York State had already passed it by one vote in 1970, and it was a Jewish assemblyman who initially, an assemblyman who voted against it, and it failed. At the very last minute, he changed his vote to vote in favor because he said, my daughter said to me, "Daddy, what if my granddaughter grows up and needs an abortion?" So for this reason, anyway, we wanted to have a repeal of this it was either 1972 or 73, and there was a senator there, Paul Bookson, an Orthodox senator who represented...
Later became a federal judge.
I believe so. He represented Rabbi Feinstein's district.
Correct.
And his vote was very crucial. So Rabbi Moshe Rivlin of blessed memory allowed me to go up to Rabbi Feinstein's home, and I was with Rabbi Feinstein when on the phone in Yiddish he spoke to Senator Bookson in Albany and told him that it would be a terrible shanda, a disgrace, if he were to still support abortion. So he voted a few days later. The New York State Senate and the entire legislature repealed the abortion law. Senator Bookson's vote was crucial. People asked him why he did it. He didn't mention Rabbi Feinstein. He just mentioned that we're going through a charade, so it doesn't matter. In the end, unfortunately, Governor Rockefeller vetoed that. Rockefeller was awful on these moral.
So let me ask you a question, Michael. Where was Rabbi Shera and Agudas Yisrael? Why did Michael Barbaro have to walk off the street to inform Rabbi Rivlin, who then allowed you to speak to Rav Moshe Feinstein Zitzal, who was kept in the dark about this? Where was Rabbi Shera and Agudas Yisrael?
Well, I have to say, I have the highest respect for the memory of Rabbi Moshe Shera of blessed memory, a man who did wonderful, wonderful things for Klal Yisrael and for Yiddishkeit. However, Rabbi Shera had one serious blind spot. He was afraid to offend the liberal politicians for whatever reasons, I don't know. Possibly they were helping Agudath Israel financially, I don't know. But anyway, Rabbi Shera was, while in principle he would agree with us on all moral matters, he being a very moral and righteous person, in actual practice he did very little to help us fight abortion or to fight the ERA until later on, when he was actually forced into fighting.
I know that you have a personal episode with him.
Yes.
And I do not bring this up, chas v'sholem, to besmirch the memory of a person who was perhaps the greatest shtadlin on these shores, and 95% or 99% of the time might have been making a tremendous Kiddush Hashem. However, I bring this up because I want to document again and again, and you are a first-hand witness to the shortcomings and the blind spot of Rabbi Shera. Now, the blind spot of Rabbi Shera in this area has now metastasized, so that we see it's far, far worse, where we're 2 generations past that, and his sort of grandchildren generation of Shtadlonim, the young fellas coming up, and even the people who directly learned from him, whether it was the Zweibels or at the points the Lubinskis or others, they're just missing this sensitivity to this, to our great detriment spiritually. And that's why we have more child molestation and more incidences of homosexuality, because if we don't care, so mida connected mida, God lets these things visit our community. But let me ask you this, because we have 8 minutes to go on. ERA, Equal Rights for Women, you were involved in helping organize a rabbinic meeting that had members of the Sachtas HaRabbanim, the Agudas HaRabbanim, the Igor HaRabbanim, and Rabbi Shera approached you verbally, and what did he tell you?
Yes, Rabbi Shera told one of the rabbis at this press conference that was attended by the major media, all the television stations, the New York Times, AP, etc., Rabbi Hollander was at this press conference.
And that was his brother-in-law.
Right, and I phoned Rabbi Shera. Rabbi Shera says, Mr. Barbaro, do not listen to my brother-in-law. Do not oppose, tell them not to fight the ERA. This will arouse a wrath of anti-Semitism throughout the country. Well, in effect, that advice was narishkeit, was ridiculous, was foolish. These several Orthodox organizations in March of 1972 took the lead in fighting the ERA. This was covered all over the country in all the major media. We even, and she's a wonderful lady, Phyllis Schlafly, a great lady, but we even beat Phyllis Schlafly in doing this first. And 2 weeks later, the Agudath Israel did oppose the ERA.
This is the same thing that happened. This is the same thing that happened when I came back from Eretz Yisrael in around 96 with my family and found the headlines in the New York Post that the Pope was doing something very rare and from Rome criticizing those who were allowing the legalization of partial birth abortion. And when I called up Rabbi David Zweibel of Aguda, and then Rabbi Shera was alive, and I asked that Aguda should get involved in criticizing this, he says, well, who knows how do you know what the halacha is? And we're not going to get involved so fast. And of course, I got the Agudas HaRabbanim, the Igor HaRabbanim, I spoke in their name in vigorously joining with many, many other religious denominations to oppose this. And then sometime later, a half a year, months later, all of a sudden, Aguda is on board. They suddenly discovered what the Das Torah is. I want to point this out to people, not because I'm putting down Aguda. I'm an Agudist. I support them on the 99% they do well, but I will continue to be a lone voice speaking up forcefully against them. And today you're hearing documentation of the flawed way of thinking with Maisa Rav of things that you won't read about in the book I just brought in the country. It was 30% off, and it was a bargain at $22 or $23, and I bought it in the country in Woodburn. I called the Sefer, the biography of Rabbi Shera. But these things you won't read. Then, of course, there was the situation with Rabbi Shera when the Salvation Army was fighting against Koch's executive order that in order to receive city funding, you have to sign you won't discriminate against homosexuals. And Aguda, I think, signed some of those things. And the Kodra Baruch definitely signed. And it wasn't until after the Salvation Army went to court, and then the Catholic Church came on, that belatedly, Agudas Yisrael came on lately. We have to know this because we have to understand that they have no samchus. I am saying this, Agudas Yisrael has no samchus. I do not believe that Rabbi Shera asked when he told you, he never asked Rav Moshe about the ERA, and he never asked Rav Moshe about the abortion. And the proof is that Rav Moshe didn't call him in front of you. You should have called him and said, Rabbi Shera, get involved and go lobby it and everything else. I don't know if maybe he did at another point, but I'm saying it was the same thing that when I initiated the letter that was signed by Rabbi Miller and the late great Debretziner Rav and the great Linzer Rav to Rav Moshe asking him to urge the people to go down to City Hall to protest against gay rights. He put out the letter on Agudas HaRabbanim stationery, not on Agudas Yisrael stationery. He did not feel that this was going to be done by Rabbi Shera for whatever the reason is. And I document this time and time again. You won't read this in your Mishpacha magazine. Tell me, what about your association with Rabbi Victor Miller?
Well, Rabbi Miller of blessed memory gave me a great deal of encouragement in fighting for Torah values. I first met Rabbi Miller when he was living in East Flatbush. At the time, we were trying to repeal the liberal abortion law in New York. Rabbi Miller gave me every encouragement. I also got a lot of encouragement from Rabbi Jacob Hecht of blessed memory. I believe Rabbi Hecht was also one of the East Flatbush rabbis, too. And
could you tell me very quickly about the question, because we're down to our last 3 minutes.
Oh, yes.
There was a question that you heard asked.
Yes, there was. I attended now and then Rabbi Miller's Thursday night lectures, and somebody asked a question of Rabbi Miller. Rabbi Miller, should we organize to fight anti-Semitism, fight to support Soviet Jewry, and fight for matters relating to Israel? Rabbi Miller said all these things are fine and important, but everyone and his pet poodle are all doing this. There is no shortage of Jews fighting anti-Semitism or fighting for Israel. That's all fine if they're doing it. Better put your efforts to fight against the immorality that is suffocating us and destroying America, where very few people are doing things, especially within the Jewish community. This is where you should put your efforts, because this is the great threat. And of course, now we have seen that threat, as Rabbi Levin would say, metastasize and become infinitely worse than it was several decades ago.
I have to ask Mechila forgiveness, not only of my dear friend Michael Barbaro, but also our radio audience. Once again, I didn't allot enough time. I thought I would have a 40-minute interview with Mr. Barbaro, and instead we are literally in our final moment. I am definitely inviting him to come back again, because we have much to talk about, and I hope we can do that in the next few weeks, because this is valuable. This is literally a legacy to this upcoming generation, that they should hear the experiences that you had firsthand. So we are definitely going to continue this dialogue. It's quite important. And let me conclude by thanking you for coming and joining with us on this program, and wishing you good health and continued success and hatzlacha. Rabbi Michael Barbaro has, I want to say again, I want to conclude with the following chazal. The chazal, I said this over on the air several weeks ago, but I want to say it again. It's a medrash, and the medrash says as follows. Somebody who has learned, he has taught, he has done the mitzvahs, everything, across the board. He is given the opportunity to protest, and he doesn't protest. The rabbis say he is considered under the bulwark of Arur Asher Lo Yokum that we just read in last week's Sedra. Cursed is the person who doesn't fulfill the Torah. He is a Torah scholar. He does mitzvahs. He's a Torah teacher. But he doesn't protest for the honor of God. The Chazal tell us he's Orur, cursed Ashalo Yokim as HaTorah, that it's considered as if he didn't fulfill the whole Torah. Somebody who did not study, he did not learn, he did not teach, he did not keep the mitzvos, and he would not be able to accomplish overturning something by protesting because he's not a powerful member of society. Nevertheless, he protested. He is considered Baruch, blessed Asher Yokum Es HaTorah Zos, who keeps the Torah, who firms up, who stands up for the Torah. Moirav Rabbeisai, Michael Barbro is my Rebbe. He's the person who got me involved. He was a shliach of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. He brought me to Rabbi Miller and started things out. And we can all learn from him. And I'm so happy that 31 or 32 years later, I have the opportunity to introduce him to a new generation of thousands of Torah Dika Yidden to listen. And we should listen to him and we should emulate him. I want to wish you a Ksivah Tova, and I'll speak to you next year. Until we meet again, a Guten Tamid.